Welcome back to another episode of Cult Products with me, Phil Keating-Bolland.
And me, Adam Yaya Durrant.
And we are the founders of Yaya, a design agency specializing in helping B2B tech startups to get off the ground, creating a brand, website, value propositions, products, lunch menus.
Menus.
Last time we spoke about websites, so this is actually part 2, and if you haven't listened to part 1, I suggest you go back and do that now. In this episode, we are going to be getting into a few more of the practical steps required to create a website for a B2B tech startup. And last time we finished on a cliffhanger, having set the objectives for the website and created a brand that differentiates the business. Today, we're going to get into some of the tools that people can use, some of the newer tools that are designed specifically for non-designers, non-developers, and how you can go about bringing that website to life. So let's get into this then. And there's lots of tools out there. When is the right time for a founder to move into that kind of design and build environment?
It's a good question, isn't it? Because there are a lot of like shiny toys out there, and they are very fun to play with. And we'll get into how fun they are to play with in a sec. But I think you have to be quite measured and have a bit of discipline, because if you're jumping straight into the deep end and just like thrashing about, you're just going to make a bit of a mess. So I think it's always good to just kind of take a little bit of a step back and really think about what your, based on your objectives, your value proposition, what the site needs to be. And as we said in the first pod, create work in Word to kind of create the structure of the site, essentially, to like what needs to be on there from a content perspective, from a sitemap perspective, and we'll go into kind of the things that we think should be on your first site. But I think biggest kind of advice would be not to jump straight into those things, and really kind of nail down the site from an architecture perspective, and get those things really kind of solidified so you're happy, and then and only then really go into the kind of shiny tools to kind of make it come together.
So you're saying then the first steps to creating a website are not go and create a account with Squarespace or Wix or whoever and start building, which I really agree with. And that sort of that thrashing about in the deep end point, what I think that looks like practically is, because you haven't defined what it is that you're trying to build, why you're trying to build it, and what good looks like, you can either be led by the tools, which will encourage you to create what it thinks you might need. And we spoke a lot in the last episode about how there are misconceptions, and that what the majority of people are doing around what they think they need is not necessarily what you actually need. So there's risk in that. Or you just end up creating stuff randomly, and either missing out on things that are really critical, or including a load of fluff that you don't need, which, to be honest, both of those things can be as bad as each other. So I would say that while the marketing for those tools suggests that is the starting point, let's go back a few steps. Now we've got, as I said before, got objectives, got a brand, clearly defined what our value proposition is. I think a good kind of next step is to start looking for inspiration. And we've spoken a little bit about where not to look for inspiration. So I don't think typing in, give me the 10 hottest website trends or the 10 coolest websites of 2024 is going to be the right approach. But what are some of the things, Adam, that you would do if you were setting out to create a website for your B2B tech startup?
I think exactly that, isn't it? It's not kind of just looking at the kind of top 10 sites of 2024, it's really thinking about your kind of competitors, like what are they doing? What does that world look like? What are the kind of common threads? What are the things that are working well? What are the things that aren't? And I think creating a bit of SWOT analysis really around those competitors to really dig a little bit deeper into those things, I think is a good starting place, because you don't want to fall into the trap of saying exactly the same thing and communicating the same way. So I would say that's a good starting place, I think, to get an understanding of the landscape that you're working within.
I think to build on that, how you select those competitors is really important. Now a lot of startup founders say that their business doesn't really have any competitors because they're doing something totally new, and to some extent that can be true. You will be competing for the attention and the budgets of people with other businesses. So it's likely that unless you're targeting a Amazonian tribe that hasn't had contact with the rest of the world, you are competing with somebody, even though they might do something quite different to you. If that's the case, it's an interesting reference point, but it might not necessarily be the type of competitor that you actually want to look at in terms of what you should be doing on your own website. The thing I would say is, if you think about who's doing a similar type of thing to you, similar type of business model, similar type of approach, and is enjoying a load of traction, ideally that you can see is coming through their website, those are the kind of people who are interesting. So they might be playing in a slightly different space, but they are a similar value platform aimed at a similar segment of the market. And I think one of the other key factors to look at there is, are they at a similar-ish stage of the business to you, or slightly ahead of where you are? So if I was launching a new word processor, there's only so much that's relevant about how Microsoft sell word processors to what I could do, because they're Microsoft and because they've got this incredible track record and scale and all the rest of those kind of things. And the things that they are selling on are different to what I would be selling on. So if there was, not something I know a massive amount about, but if there was a company making a word processor who had launched it in the past couple of years, was growing quickly, I'd learn more from looking at their website than I would from looking at Microsoft, because I'm likely to be able to employ similar strategies in my own website and my own business. So that I think narrows it down to people that you're going to get relevant information from. Then I think, Adam, what kind of information are you actually looking for, and what's useful in thinking about your own website that you can learn from those people?
It's a good question, because I guess there's a couple of different layers to that, isn't there? It's looking at like a brand from a brand perspective, so looking at how they kind of communicate their brand effectively, like what kind of things are they doing that's like really kind of working in terms of their messaging framework, tone of voice, in terms of how like differentiated they are with the brand that they've created. Structure of the site, I think it's really kind of important to kind of gauge from those kind of organizations that you've pinpointed, how they structuring information, what's the kind of is it clear what the objective of the site is, understanding how they're funneling people to certain bits of content or certain calls to action, things like that, I think is kind of quite good to get a kind of read on from those people if they're doing it successfully, for sure. What else can we think of? What else would you say in terms of?
So I would say what's interesting, if you looked at 10 websites what's going to be interesting is what are the consistencies across those 10 websites. So what are the things that feel like established patterns that users would just expect to have? And some of those consistencies can be effective, some of those consistencies can be ineffective, and you can take a look and say, well, everybody is doing a pricing table on their website. So users expect to be able to go on and figure out how expensive something is. You kind of have to do the same, or for some strategic reason, intentionally differentiate by I don't know, being a bit more mysterious around that kind of stuff. Some things you might say, every website seems to fall into this trap. I'm going to intentionally avoid it. Then I think there are the inconsistencies, and they're as interesting as the consistency. So you might find one site has something on it that is only on that site and is incredibly effective and works incredibly well. I'm not suggesting just copy it like for like necessarily, but what can you learn from that, and what need is that serving for users, and how would you design something that serves that need as well? So I think you're gonna find things that basically you either want to replicate or don't want to replicate, and those I think are the kind of interesting things that you can pick up from looking at competitors.
Yeah, indeed. So okay, let's say I've done that work then, and I've created my own little kind of auditing or kind of checklist of kind of doing a analysis of those different sites. What do I need to do now? I've got that information. I've got a fairly clear idea of like the structure of the site and the kind of components and elements that need to be on that. What's my next move?
I think the next thing is in a lot of cases, well, is there ever a case where a business would say, I don't want any conversions to come through my website? I think the answer to that is probably no. We've certainly worked with a lot of people who say it's not the number one priority, and that really comes down to what your business development strategy is. But for most people, that would be beneficial. So I think you then go there and you say, what is our strategy for getting conversions? Now, you probably can't say that the only strategy you have is to put a big red button that says book a demo in the corner of the screen. The reason you can't do that is because you're going to get a mix of different types of traffic to your website. So you're going to get everyone from, if you have a attraction strategy and advertising and marketing, people who have literally just found out who you are, or even, to be honest, don't really know who you are, but have ended up on your website, who need some education and warming up. They're not going to just book a demo because they, within sort of 30 seconds of arriving on the site, you're going to get people on there who are aware that they have a problem. You're going to get people on there who are aware that they need the kind of solution that you offer, and you're going to get people who know who you are and would like to work with you. Now, you don't want to overcomplicate these things, but those different kind of people have different kind of needs and need different kinds of conversion points. And what I mean by that is, some people will be ready to book a meeting with you, or if your product is self-serve, to just create an account. Some people are looking for help defining what their problem is, and that's where you need resources and content that helps explain that kind of stuff. It's also where you need stuff like potentially, I don't know, webinars, training guides, all those kind of things that explain why your solution is the answer to that problem. And what the game traditionally has always been is, if we exchange something of value to you, will you give us your email address, and then can we use email marketing and other nurture tactics to warm you up to the point that you then want to have a conversation about buying the product or book a demo or actually convert. And look, lots of people have lots of different views on this, but you need to have a view on what that strategy is, and you need to think about the different types of people and their stage that they are in the funnel, if they're kind of hot, warm, cold, what it is that you're going to offer them as a way to enter your ecosystem and actually convert. What we see a lot of is focusing too much on the bottom of the funnel and expecting, two things really: expecting everybody who comes on the site to be, potentially ready to book a demo, and not paying enough attention to how you actually get people onto the site. So the number of people who come on is low and the number of people who convert is low. But if you can get to a place where you have a strategy for getting people onto the website, and that can be everything from organic SEO to pay-per-click, social media to paid advertising, YouTube videos, all of that stuff. And when you're on the site, you have different conversion points for different people at different stages of the funnel. Then you've got higher volume plus higher percentage conversion rates, more leads coming into your business, and more potential opportunity to generate revenue. That is something that you really need to think about before you start designing the site.
And do you just, in terms of those conversion points what's the best way to kind of map that out in terms of, like, if you were trying to figure out, okay, how do I work out where these go, and like in terms of the structure of the site itself, what's the kind of best way to do that?
Lots of people have lots of different ways of doing this. I think my own view is that giving away a lot of value is a good starting point. So in all of the interactions you have with your market, whether they are one-on-one interactions or whether they're one-to-many interactions, that your first principle is, how do I make this stuff actually really valuable and helpful, and free. And by free, I mean, even just don't ask for email addresses to access it. You take what we're doing, for example. This podcast is free. Hopefully it's useful. And it kind of, as we've seen since we started doing it, increases the number of interactions we have with interesting people, and deepens the how interesting those interactions are. I think that's a good starting point. And that is really, that's about awareness. So you don't really want to sort of charge people to become aware of you, I don't think. Then you get into a space where people know you and they have an interest in what you're doing, and particularly if you've already given them something valuable, they're kind of on the hook. Then I think you would like to try and take them from a place of, okay, you're interesting, to I think that working with you can help me solve a problem. And again, this is about providing value. So that phase normally we would call consideration, but you could also kind of call it warm leads. You've moved down a step in the funnel. When you get to that stage, I think you can start to make things not be free. I'm still not talking about kind of monetary value here, but it's okay to say, we're doing a training session. It's free, but you have to give us your email address to sign up. And part of that is we're then going to follow up and do nurture campaigns and all that kind of stuff with you. And once you've done that, and it's quite educational and again high value, eventually you get people into what's called the sort of decision phase, and that is generally where somebody is weighing up you against other people who might provide a solution to their problem. The kind of stuff people like to look at that point, they can be business cases, case studies if you've got them, those kinds of things. Interestingly, I think at that point you kind of probably shouldn't be gating things, and because those people are like super keen, make it easy for them to access. And you should never really ask for somebody's email to send them a case study. If somebody's at the stage where they want to look at a case study and they're evaluating you as a potential supplier, don't put a barrier in their way. And then the conversion point at that place is generally either buy or book a meeting. And so you sort of want to think about all of those different stages and how you interact with people at each one of those different stages, and how your website journey caters to all those different people.
Yeah. And if you go back to what we were saying at the start of the conversation, that's exactly why, it's not a quick fix just jumping into these kind of AI tools and kind of mucking around, because you're going to just create a bit of a Frankenstein that doesn't have that kind of structure or kind of user journey mapped out and articulated. But given that you've done that work, which that's that's the kind of holy grail of given that, I think.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get into some of the tools and things that you can use to do that. Okay, welcome back. Still talking about websites. In this part of the show, we're going to be getting into some of the practical ways to actually design and build the sort of tip of the iceberg, I suppose. We've spoken now a bit about the sort of conversion strategy and some of the inspiration that you can take from competitors, as well as the brand and overall objectives. Adam, what happens at this point if you just jump into the website builder tools now?
Well, yeah, I think if you jumped in at this point, you say you've got your colors and those kind of like more visual stuff probably defined by that point, and you've defined those kind of conversion points, but what you haven't really got locked down effectively is essentially the site structure, so a site map. And what we mean by that's kind of what are the different kind of pages on a site. So you have a home page, contact page, about page, so really kind of nailing those down, and then the content that kind of sits underneath those pages, so kind of getting that in a structured form. And we talked about in the first podcast that can be as simple as doing that, and actually is more effective just doing all that stuff in a Word document to enable you to create that kind of flow and that content. If you don't do that and you go straight in, it's an absolute mess still. So you have to be a bit patient here, and we're still not there yet. I would suggest that is the next step to kind of undertake and really kind of pinpoint. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you don't have a clearly defined target that you're aiming for, you're just going to still be in that situation of we've made things a little bit less fuzzy, but you're still going to end up with just a kind of random collection of components that either the tool suggests that you have, or that you just happen to sort of think of. The good news, I suppose, is that I think you can start with a base site structure. We've spoken about this, that is that pretty well understood at this point. So there are, I would say, some core pages that you need when you're starting a B2B tech startup on your website. Let's just go through those. So number one, I suppose the most obvious, but not necessarily the most important, is the homepage. A lot of people think of the homepage as the main page of their website. Now, we do a lot of analytics tracking on sites that we build, and there's a lot of research about this. But the homepage, you've got to think about, firstly, who are the people who are probably going to land on that page, and how are they going to get there? If you have an advertising strategy, that is based on sending people to landing pages, which is generally the sort of optimal way of doing that sort of thing. Those people are going to bypass your homepage. So the people who just don't have a clue who you are probably not going to be the main constituency who hit that page. It's mainly going to be people who are coming via organic traffic, who are at least searching for something that is is relevant and served by you and your site. So they have some understanding of who and what you are, or direct people who are just putting the URL into their kind of navigation bar, or people who've actually searched for your brand terms. So they're pretty well educated on who you are and what you do as a business. Really, you can kind of assume that they're in the kind of mid to lower stages of the funnel and focus on conversion on that page. But also your homepage really is a jumping off page for other people, for other places on the site. You can't expect users to go on a linear journey where they start in the top left-hand corner of your homepage, read everything down to the bottom, then go to the About Us page, then go on and on through the site. It's much more like people are searching for a needle in a haystack, and the job is to make that haystack pretty easy to search through. And the role that your homepage plays in that is cover the basics. Who are you? What do you do? Are you a real company? And then how do we get you on to the pages where you have much deeper information about more specific things that you're interested in?
Yeah, it is the shop window, but it's not the shop window at the same time, isn't it? It's like the thing that needs to have all the kind of links out to kind of the pages, but the amount of kind of energy and focus that gets put on that homepage is always just like, it's crazy, isn't it? And from our analytics and like what we've kind of known and experienced, it just really isn't the most kind of important page of a business, even though every business seems to think it is. So I think that's definitely sound advice. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the kind of structure in, and we've got the content.
Well, we've got the homepage.
Well, we've got the homepage, yes. So we've only got one. We've only got one page. That might be enough for some people.
Yeah, well,
as a first hurdle, we do talk about iterations.
Yeah, exactly. It could be
one pages,
a one-page website. A one-page website homepage, by the way, has a very different function to a multi-page.
Gosh, yeah. We used to do a lot of those, didn't we? One pages.
An About Us page. I think this is really just about establishing credibility. Are you a real business? Can you actually solve the problem that you've got? You actually have people, technology, everything that you need. You work in the right countries. You can scale to fit the type of organization that we are. And then stuff about the mission, values of the company, a little bit about the history and background as well. How many years have you been around? All that kind of stuff. There's variation in what different About Us pages look like, but best way to think about it, I think, is probably like credibility and personality.
Yeah, I think also, if one of your objectives is to that you're scaling and hiring, that's obviously like a place you want to put quite a lot of focus on in terms of for attraction and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the purposes of today, we'll park careers pages, but there's a lot. That's a separate podcast, at least one separate podcast just on how you think about those. They're almost a separate website in themselves in some cases. Pricing. Now, pricing, I think, is the thing that businesses sometimes want to say the least about, and customers want to know the most about. And I guess the reason for that is because you pin yourself down to a specific number. You then end up negotiating from a kind of defined spot. Now, if you're doing the sort of high volume, Slack, Loom-esque product, I think you can't really get away from having pricing. Nobody's going to want to have a negotiation for something like that. And when you're at the lower pricing end of things, I think that makes sense. If you're doing something that is like highly custom and flexible and into the sort of like six figures spot, you might want to keep the specifics back, but it is a it is a very genuine user need that customers want to know how much something's going to cost to determine whether they're interested in it. It's like if you go and look at a house and you're like, this is a really nice house, and can you tell me how much it is? And like, it's £10 million. You're like, well, I can't afford a £10 million house. Why am I looking around?
Why have I looked at
it? It's annoying, and it's taken me like quite a lot of time and effort to go and do that. It's a similar. You have a balancing act there. And the other thing to think about is pricing pages are a good indicator of where somebody's mindset is and how far down that funnel they are. Because if you're interested in how much a solution costs, you're probably thinking about buying it.
Good point. Yeah, I definitely think, especially for like, SaaS businesses, having the pricing being transparent is always the way forward. And I mean, it's just kind of like it's standard now, really, isn't it? To have that. I don't think it used to be, but it's become standardized. Obviously enterprise packages are always kind of hidden, but another one which is a good one, which is something that we say a lot to people, is around FAQs. I think they're useful to have on multiple levels, really, because it's a good way to house kind of SEO rich content. And people, again, if they are really interested, they're going to dive into that stuff. But it's a good one to kind of have on your site. Don't necessarily need its own page. It could be kind of tagged on as a component, but super useful, I think, for people who are looking to kind of invest in something.
I think I mean, I 100% agree. There are two different kinds of FAQs pages. There are questions that a business is frequently asked, and questions that a business has made up that they just want to communicate more information, but do it in the form of a question. And I think the former is the more useful thing, even if sometimes the questions that people ask can be either very, very tactical or potentially not things that the business necessarily wants to be the central message of what they have on their website. This is something where you can actually listen to what customers want and then build around it. So I think that is a much better user experience than just more content in question form.
That is quite a funny point, actually, and I do notice that a lot. Like, especially on Amazon, like, you're looking for answers in the content the whole time, and then you get to the FAQs, and that's where you get them, and they're just like very, I guess, very just natural human like questions which are kind of hidden from the actual like communication and marketing. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing, isn't
it? Use cases, I think we'll put these together with the kind of industries and segments pages. So there's kind of a matrix of ways you could look at this stuff. Either you put a bunch of pages in there which are like, you can use our tool to do this, which is the use case stuff, or these are the types of people who can use our tool and what problems it solves for them. Or you do both, and in a lot of cases that's what we do. So for example, you might say, here's a page talking specifically about how this tool is used in healthcare, here's how it's used in manufacturing, here's how it's used in professional services. Or you might say, here's how you use this tool to reduce your spend on something, or improve the quality of something, or make it happen faster, or even more specific things within a tool, like this is how it's used for scheduling, or this is how it's used for communication. I think some blend of those that explains what you do, but that's value proposition led rather than just pure features and benefits. So we've spoken a lot about value propositions. Let's not go back into what those are too much, but is ultimately on why a customer gets value from your solution as opposed to just what it does. And then I think, case studies, great if you've got them. Format of those should basically always be, this was a problem, this is the solution we put in place, here's the results. If you're a startup, you're unlikely to start off with a bunch of those, but they'll kind of grow over time, gives you a bit more credibility. Landing pages, we've spoken about a bit. These are highly conversion optimized pages that you can use for targeting, advertising, keywords, SEO keywords, all of those kinds of things. The way to do those is to get an SEO specialist to tell you what the high volume search terms in your industry are, and then create content specifically around those. And then the final thing I think that kind of just goes within the, like, these are default things that every B2B tech startup could have is actually comparisons. And that's where you either compare your business against a wide range of other solutions on the market and get into the specifics of why yours is different, better, what it includes that others don't, what the package looks like, or against one specific competitor. So, for example, if you're Slack, you might do a why Slack and not Microsoft Teams page. And they're great because those are the kind of questions that buyers are weighing up in their mind. But also it means that you can then start to target their branded keywords when you're doing advertising, and they are useful for SEO as well. So you could just start and say, those are the pages that you need. So homepage, about, pricing, use cases, industries, comparisons, landing pages, case studies, FAQs. There's a sitemap. Now, can we build a website?
Yes, we can. Well, we can find the tools to do so. So we've been exploring some of those tools for you. So it saves the time to have a play around. And obviously we are kind of very kind of in, obviously our day to day, we use a lot of kind of more design, we call design based software, which is probably it is a lot more complex. But we're kind of looking at this from the lens of not being a designer, being a founder with no kind of prior knowledge to design, and just kind of tested out a bit of the tools which are out there, and there's some kind of interesting stuff. And the one we're kind of focusing in on, because we think it's really easy and really kind of user-friendly and designed in a way that we think is really powerful and a bit game-changing, is probably you've heard of it, Squarespace. It's kind of the one that I think is a little bit more easier to use for a novice than something like Webflow or WordPress and more complex stuff. And it's a great tool. It kind of brings in AI to help you essentially generate your kind of initial first site. And it has almost what I would describe as a kind of a website wizard type form kind of style interface, and that asks you some very top level kind of questions around what's the site's purpose, what's the tone of the site. Essentially, you can kind of choose colors and color palettes, but most importantly, kind of the structure, and it will generate then different types of kind of components that will sit within that structure. So essentially, once you've mapped out your sitemap, you can kind of essentially just plug that information into a tool like that. And it will build you out a kind of already built, kind of coded site that's fully responsive, which I think is pretty incredible, really, and can be adapted like in terms of like content as well. Like tonally, you can kind of play around with how you want that to be presented in terms of like whether it needs to be more of a corporate looking site or kind of more of a friendly and familiar site. So basically there's quite a lot of different things you can do, and having this kind of structure and everything we've talked about beforehand in place means that it's a pretty quick exercise, and will get you something, won't be perfect, but it will get you something that has a lot of the kind of basics of a website already pre-built, which I think is great. So I definitely had a lot of fun playing around with that tool. I don't know what your experience was like with it, Phil, and if you kind of thought it was pretty powerful as well, because it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is really important, is that there are two distinct sets of tools that exist at the minute. There are tools that are designed to be used by designers, and there are tools that are designed to be used by non-designers. And I think the potential of what you can achieve in the tools that are for designers is very different to the ones that are designed for for non-designers. So of course, with 20 years of experience and high capability in things like Figma and Webflow and all those kind of things, you're going to get to a different place to using AI tools and Squarespace and those kind of things like that. That is fine. It's not a good idea to try and use the tools that are there for designers, because the learning curve is going to be really steep, and you'll actually end up with a worse end result than if you use the ones that are like, there's a cap on what you can achieve in them, but it's easier to hit that cap in those environments. So Squarespace, I think, we used to use that ourselves. Building website, it's kind of it's always been somewhere in between, super user friendly and has the capability to be kind of used well by designers. The stuff that they're doing at the minute is very clearly focused on business owners, founders, and I think that that makes it really useful. I would suggest that before even going into that environment, is take the sitemap and the structure and actually think about writing down, as we said in the previous episode, all the content that you want to put on those pages, because that will mean you can go a level deeper in the design process to make sure that what you actually are building fits the content that you want to put out there. And using those kind of brutalist principles, identifying the things in that content that need to be brought to life more with media and things like that. I am interested. So there's sort of two routes available to people. There's create a thing using AI tools from scratch, or from the sitemap that we've come up with and the content, or go down a route of picking a template and then customizing it. And I personally would start with a template. And the reason that I would do that is I'd look for, popularity of templates is an interesting metric to look at. I don't think it's the worst one in the world. If you can combine it with, does this template have the pages that I need? Does it seem focused on the objective that I care about? And is it back to this idea of, is it popular because it solves a practical need for the business and delivers an objective, or is it popular because it hits all the latest design trends? If you pick something like that already is designed and optimized for achieving your objective, and customize it, given all of the below the waterline iceberg stuff that you've done, I think that probably is an easier place to start for a founder than even using a from scratch AI tool at the minute. And I think that will probably change as the AI tools become more sophisticated.
Yeah, I don't think there's much in it, to be honest. I think the sophistication of those AI tools are becoming so good, and they are using kind of tried and tested patterns that it's hard to tell really sometimes with them whether they are like really. Sometimes they're a bit more gimmicky than actually useful, but yeah, I do agree with your point around it isn't a bad place to look at the kind of most popular ones and the ones that are kind of being used more thoroughly because they're working well. And then again, it's about obviously we don't want to have a site that looks like everyone else's, but your content and your brand will then come through and be that differentiator. So you don't need to worry. But yeah, I think it's getting closer to a point where AI will be easier for people to use and build sites, no doubt. Whether it's there yet, not 100% sure, but yeah, it's definitely kind of an interesting point in site development, and for people who don't have design backgrounds to be able to pick this stuff up a lot more effectively.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I don't think there's much in it. I think the reason I kind of more towards the template thing is just that standing on the shoulders of giants thing. Like if you've got something that works and is properly validated, and you can you can sort of know what good looks like. I think that's the thing with all of these AI tools and with empowering founders to do stuff is it's easy to create stuff, but it's hard to know whether it's the right stuff. And even with AI, AI can obviously hallucinate and go wrong on things, and be very confident that it's got the right thing and be totally wrong. Where I feel like a bit more kind of social proof, community validation, that kind of stuff, coupled with all of the things that we've spoken about, actually, I think we've probably given people, if we've given them value over the past couple of episodes, a framework for thinking about how to tell whether a website is actually good and is actually going to achieve objectives. Then I think at the minute, for me personally, I'd probably go with a thing that exists rather than just start from scratch. But I don't think there's much in it, and I think what there is in it is going to get less and less over time.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I think we've done websites.
Yeah,
at least for now.
Built a website. Yeah. I think we have. Yes. Well done. Hopefully that was interesting, and hopefully people got some kind of really good value from that. Yeah.
We've covered a lot. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can do that at yaya.co. If you'd like more information about our Cult Products program, you can go to cultproducts.yaya.co. Please, if you've enjoyed and found the podcast useful, like, subscribe, share where you can. Really does make a huge amount of difference to us being able to grow the podcast and to be able to keep giving valuable stuff away, I hope. That's it from us. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks, Adam. Good to chat.
Cool. Thanks, Phil.
You. And we will see you for another episode next week.
Cool. See you guys.